Hey everyone, I know it's been a little while since we've done some updates, but I've been busy working away on the C10. Pretty much got most of the LS engine wired, got it firing over. I do have a few small things need to get with the air-fuel ratio, but for the most part this will be done. And then tidying up, bleeding the brakes, adding fluids, hoses, that sort of thing. So that's almost done, just some small nitpicky stuff. Got to get some exhaust done to help with the air-fuel ratio as well too. So we should have a video on that here in the not too distant future. But in the meantime, I'm going to be starting to work on the K5. As you can see, I've already got it wheels off, down on jack stands, pretty much as low as possible on the jack stands to be able to still access stuff. And now I'm going to start tearing apart the front of the four-wheel drive suspension. It's a total of 7 bolts, and I'm going to drop axle, leaf springs, everything down on one shot, cut the brake lines, and then I can get in and start cleaning up the area to put in the two-wheel drive crossmember. So I'll show you now how to get everything off and drop the four-wheel drive axle out so we can start prepping for the crossmember. Alright, so as you'll tell, most of these, since they are four-wheel drive, they will be caked in dirt. I went ahead and shot pretty much all the bolts I needed to be removed with some rust penetrant, WD-40, whatever you want to call it. But really what you need to do is you need to remove the upper hanger bolt there, disconnect the shock, which I've already done, then the front hanger bolt, and you have the pitman arm where it connects into the steering. I already got the cotter pin out of that, and so we'll be able to unbolt that, knock that loose, and then take out the front and the rear. Same on the other side, with the exception of you don't have the steering arm, and drop it down one shot and pull everything out. So you can tell drive shaft is already disconnected back in there. I bought this K5 as a roller, so it didn't have a drive shaft or an engine. Makes it a little bit easier. Cut a few lines, like I said, for brakes, and it'll all drop out. Alright, so as I mentioned, I'm going to try and drop this all as one unit. I did go ahead and put a jack underneath the axle just to give some extra support to it. So you can tell, looking down at the rotors, there's only about 3 inches of travel before the rotors hit the ground. So not too really worried about the weight coming down, but just having a jack gives you a little bit extra security there. It is, when both sides are loose, going to be kind of wobbling back and forth, but that way I'll be able to pull it all out from underneath it as one unit. So I'm going to go ahead and start removing the rear hanger bolts. The front I already got the nut off, so just need to knock that out and knock loose the pitman arm. Alright, so this rear bolt is a 11/16, so I'll go ahead and get the nut off of this one. As I said, they can be very rusty. we've got that one off. I'm not going to take anything loose or completely out until I get everything loose. Now I'm going to move over to the pitman arm. As I said, I've already got the cotter pin removed, which that's normally half the battle. And then now I'll get off the actual bolt. Should be at 15/16. All right, so I can't find my open end. I'm gonna go ahead and just do this with a socket. As you can tell, it's moving the steering first. I'm gonna try and get the impact on it and see if I can get it that way. All right. A lot easier that way. Take a hammer. Knock that out. So now all of our steering is dropped down. We've got, I already went ahead and loosened the front perch. So I just need to knock that bolt out, knock the rear bolt out of the upper hanger, and this side's good. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove the other side. Again, the other side's a little bit easier. You've got the shock to remove. I just did the lower shock bolt, got that removed, the hanger, and the front hanger. So I'll go ahead and remove that, and then drop down the axle. All right, so as you can see, I've got the whole front suspension removed. I do have to take off the shock that's still on there. Unfortunately, my bolts weren't that easy to get off, so I ended up cutting the shackles, and I'll just pop out those. Used a probably liquid torch to get that out. And then the fronts, again, too, so I had to cut the hanger. I'll go and clean that up, obviously, later. But as you can see, just cut the shackle there on the rear. On the front, this bolt on both sides was basically seized in. This one I really couldn't get to cut it, so I just cut the bracket, as you can see, and made some cuts around to get that off. On this side, I was able to get to the bolt, so I was able to just cut up through the bolt and knock that off. And then on the back side, was able to cut that shackle off. Then just cut the two brake lines, and then the vent tube for the axle. All in all, probably took me about 2.5 hours because of all the cutting I had to do. Hopefully your bolts won't be as stuck as mine were, but again, you know, these trucks were used to play out in the dirt and mud, and mine was just seized up. And for, you know, 72, you're talking 40, 50 years old almost. They did not want to come out, but prepare for it, and it's not too hard. Just take your time and cut, cut, cut. So now we'll go and clean up the rear, and I'll show you how to put in the cross member. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and remove this 4x4 cross member. You've got a total of 8 bolts, 4 on each side. They are 9/16. So you got 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, and then the same on the other side. So we'll go ahead and get these removed and then get the 4x4 cross member out. All right, so got all of the 8 bolts out. You do have some brake lines and fuel lines that run through here, but we may have to rip some of those out to get this out. But we'll get a hammer and start moving it, and shouldn't be too hard, and we'll have this out and be able to start putting the 2-wheel drive cross member in. And there you go, 4-wheel drive cross members out. We'll do some cleaning up, but I'll show you how the 2-wheel drive cross member fits in. All right, so as you can see, we do have to clear some space on the frame. We have the bump stop for the solid axle. That bracket has to go so that the mounts on this cross member where the upper control arms bolt need to go on. There's also some bolts we'll clear off there just to give us enough room, and the brake line, already cut that, gonna run new brake lines. But we will take that out so we can get everything mocked up. All right, and then what we'll do once we get closer is got those rivets ground down. I'll take an air hammer and chisel, just punch those 2 out. Don't have to if you don't want to, but just for aesthetics on the other side, I'll clean those out. But now I'm gonna go and repeat the process on the other side, and then we'll work on getting the cross member in. All right, so now that we've got both sides smoothed off with the bump stop brackets, I did have to loosen up the front brake line bracket on the other side and just push those brake lines up out of the way, so that way we can get flush mounting here. So what I'm going to do is slide the cross member in, rest it on the jack, and then be able to lift it up and have the jack hold it in place so we can mark out where the bolt holes need to be for the 2-wheel drive cross member. All right, and as you can see, it's mocked up in there. I'm gonna go and take some measurements with control arms on to make sure everything's lined up and then bolt it in. All right guys, so I've gone ahead and put on the lower control arms, the spindle, as well as the upper control arms. Just got them loosely mocked in for place right now. I am going to obviously take them off, clean them up, that sort of stuff, but I'm gonna put the rotor on now so I can put a wheel on, make sure I can measure the wheelbase from front to rear, make sure all that's good. Then I'll be able to mark out the holes on the cross member. As you can see, there's 2 up top, then there's 2 underneath on both sides. So I'll mark those out, then tear everything apart, drill those holes, and be able to bolt the cross member in for good. All right guys, so here's what it looks like with the rotor and the wheel on. Pretty much got it centered in the wheel well, kind of hard to tell. It could go back maybe a hair. I'm not gonna really mess with that until I get the passenger side done. Make sure everything's square, make sure the wheelbase is good. But pretty easy install, just a matter of a little bit of time to get it done. So probably the hardest thing is just grinding out the rivets on the old bump stop to get that out. So some pointers that worked for me was I have 2 jacks up front. I put 1 jack under the center of the cross member, and what I did for that was to keep pressure on the cross member and hold it in place. Then I bolted up the suspension on this side, put the jack underneath it, jacked it up, put on the wheel and the rotor, and then that way I could kind of see where the wheel sat in the wheel well. I would then go and lower the cross member just a hair to get enough pressure off of it. Take a BFH and slowly tap it back on both sides to make sure to get the wheel where it is centered in the wheel well. And again, it looks pretty close. It may be off just a hair, but it's just lowering that cross member down a little bit, whacking it with a hammer, moving it back just a hair, putting pressure back on it, and then going back and checking to see where you're at. So once I get the other side done, I'm gonna wrap that up hopefully tonight. Then I'll go and drill out the holes. There's 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom for the cross member. So I will drill those out, bolt them in, and then the front's done. So not gonna bore you guys with that, but overall, as you can see, it's a pretty easy process. My total time in it to do this swap, I would say would be about 5 hours. And now that doesn't include the having to pull the cross member if you had to do that. I got the cross member from a buddy, so that made it easy. I had all the other parts. I am going to tear down all the suspension, like I said earlier, get it sandblasted, painted, just clean it up a little bit, and then bolt it all together. But the key thing I wanted to do is get the cross member mocked up in place and get that bolted in before I do the rest of it. Well, that's it for the 2-wheel drive conversion on a K5 Blazer. Next we'll start on the rear, and I'll be doing a flip kit on that. So stay tuned for the next video.